inarticulate sound of distress at the sight that met her eyes. It was a fire, and it was the bookstore on the far side of the square that was burning. For a few crucial seconds, her mind simply refused to accept reality. Gripping the window frame for support, she squeezed her eyes tightly shut and tried to convince herself that she was still asleep, that this was just another nightmare. 8 months earlier, Liss, Dan, and their friend Sherry Campbell had been, albeit briefly, trapped inside a burning house. That fire, too, had broken out in the middle of the night. It had been weeks afterward before Liss had been able to sleep soundly again. Her eyes popped open in time to see flames shoot up behind the first-floor windows of Angie's books. Angie! Where was Angie? Where were her children? The bookstore owner lived in the apartment above her shop with 16-year-old Beth and 12-year-old Bradley. The Moose Took a Look Fire Department was located right next door, housed in part of the town's red brick municipal building. The overhead door had already been raised. As Liss watched, unable to move, unable to look away, the truck pulled out, maneuvering so that it could get closer to the burning building. More volunteer firefighters arrived on the scene as the siren continued to wail. 2 of them hauled one of the fire hoses into position and aimed a steady stream of water at the blaze. Farther down the street and on the green, ordinary citizens had already begun to gather to watch in horrified fascination as the bookstore was engulfed in flames. There was no hope of saving it. Paperbacks, hardcovers, magazines, they were all extremely flammable. Liss squinted, searching frantically for Angie and Beth and Bradley. She couldn't spot them anywhere. Her chest rose and fell in time with her agitated breathing. What if they were still inside? What if they were trapped? Struggling for calm, Liss told herself that they must have escaped. Angie was scrupulous about changing her smoke alarm batteries. She and her kids would have had plenty of time to get out. Heck, Angie was probably the one who'd alerted the fire department. But where was she? Where were Beth and Bradley? An overwhelming need to make certain they were safe broke the spell that had held Liss motionless. She pushed away from the window. On legs that felt like rubber, her brain as sluggish as molasses, she headed for the bedroom door. "Clothes!" Dan's shout was accompanied by the sudden flood of light from a bedside lamp. Liss stopped in her tracks to look down at herself. She couldn't go outside dressed as she was. Her lightweight summer nightshirt barely covered the essentials. Dan, who'd had the good sense to start dressing as soon as he rolled out of bed, reached for the jeans she'd left draped over a chair and tossed them at her. She fumbled the catch and had to stoop to pick them up off the floor. Although he had to be as shaken as she was, Dan was in better control of himself. Clothing in place, he jammed his feet into running shoes, barely taking time to tie the laces, before he moved past her into the hallway. Liss scrambled into her jeans. Her hands shook so badly that she had trouble managing the simple task of getting a t-shirt out of a drawer and pulling it over her head. Slipping on sandals nearly defeated her. It seemed to take forever to make herself decent. By the time she reached the foot of the stairs, the front door stood open, and Dan was halfway across the town square. Dan raced past the playground with its jungle gym, slide, merry-go-round, and swings without giving it a second glance. The gazebo-style bandstand and the flower beds weren't on his radar either. He didn't even stick to the paths. Sighting on the flagpole, he cut across the grass. The siren, which fell silent just as he reached the municipal building, had done its job, alerting the neighbors. Summoning volunteer firefighters from every corner of the village had been done by pager. Trucks from neighboring towns would be on their way to help, but it would take at least another quarter hour for them to arrive. A few months earlier, Dan had started the mandatory training required by the state before a person could serve as a volunteer firefighter. He had his CPR certification, but he wasn't even a quarter of the way through the 244 hours of class time. Nor had he yet taken the CPAT, the Candidate Physical Ability Test, that required him to complete 8 components while wearing 50 pounds of equipment and racing the clock.